Hello, I'm Bill.
I'm Jesse.
Welcome to the Carolina and Beyond podcast. This is our first episode. So we'll take a few minutes and just introduce ourselves, tell you a little bit about ourselves, and we'll go from there. I'm Bill Cranford. Spent 4 years in the military, in the Marine Corps. Picked up a love for traveling pretty much right out of high school, and the military really helped with that. Grow an appreciation for meeting people from other places. So I've always enjoyed travel. I travel some for work and then a lot for recreation. I like to do short trips, weekend trips, camping trips, a lot of stuff locally. So a lot of times in our podcast, Carolina and Beyond, I may cover more of the local flair. And then I'll let Jesse tell you a little bit about himself.
My name is Jesse Barney. I've worked for the last almost 12 years as a air traffic controller for the federal government. I also have done I've done my fair share of time in the military.
Done some time.
Almost sounds like prison, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it almost is like
okay.
prison.
It's similar in ways. At least they pay you some, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so I've done some traveling with the military, but I think my first taste of travel was with my older brother. He was the one who kind of encouraged me to get out, and if you see an opportunity, take it. We did a backpack trip for about 2 weeks through Europe, both when we were both broke. So,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
so we learned a lot of good lessons on that trip, what not to do mostly.
What not to do. Well, Jesse, what makes a good trip for you?
I think memories really is what makes a good trip for me. Something that I can flip back through my photos in my phone and think, man, that was such a great trip, whether or not it was at the time.
Right.
But at least if you can look back on it with fondness, I think that's what really makes it a good trip.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think for me, when I'm thinking about what a good trip looks like, or trips that I've had that I always look back on fondly, those memories are what really stick out. And honestly, sometimes the trip that doesn't go exactly as planned, or there's, something changes last minute, or there's a weather problem, those things that turn into travel frustrations on the day oftentimes make for the best memories. Maybe it's something of the pain and the suffering of something not going according to plan, but those memories tend to last a little bit longer.
Those definitely are very vivid memories. I have a few of them I can think of myself.
The meal that doesn't quite sit right or whatever, but those sort of stick out in your mind. So, well, let me ask you this then. What's your favorite part about travel?
I have always loved going to the airport from when I was a little kid. And it's funny because it's the same airport that I currently work at.
Yep.
I remember going to pick my grandmother up, and that was when you could actually walk all the way to the gate and go through security, not being a ticketed passenger several millennia ago, I think. I just remember the magic of seeing that huge metal object that had no reason to be in the sky take off and just rip through the sky. I've always loved aviation. And there's some excitement, I think, about going to the airport.
Yeah, I think it's that anticipation of travel, the bustle of it. There's something in that is just very exhilarating. Even when I travel for work, and I don't travel for work nearly as much as some professions do, especially during this COVID season, but anytime I'm traveling and I'm going to the airport, there's this exhilarating feeling. I've always sort of been enamored by it too. There's just something cool about traveling at airports or train stations, or just
Right.
It's that unfamiliarness that gives you kind of a heightened sense of awareness, and really, really enjoy that. For me, my favorite part of travel is being somewhere I've never been or seeing something I've never seen. So even if it's a historic site here in North Carolina that maybe I've driven by or near but never stopped and learned about, it's that new piece of knowledge or that experiencing something that has been there the whole time waiting for you to experience it. I guess that's the best way to put it. that for me is one of my favorite parts of travel. So even if it's in going to a restaurant and getting a meal, if it's something I've never done before or somewhere I've never been,
Well, it's like, yeah, I agree. Going to Rome and seeing the Colosseum is just an amazing experience. Thinking about this place has been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Well, maybe not that many.
maybe not
thousands.
3 of them,
Maybe
but
two.
yeah.
But at least seeing that and
Right.
thinking about all the people who have been there.
Who've come and gone
Right.
for various reasons.
Or like I went to Yellowstone with my brothers one year, and just sitting up on a hill in Yellowstone and thinking what would it look like 200 years in the past.
No.
What would this area look like?
Maybe not a whole lot different, but yeah,
Maybe
it's just
have
amazing.
more people around and
Yeah, it's just amazing.
maybe more bison or something like that.
All right, so before we get into our most recent trip, and that's kind of how we'll segregate these podcasts, is trips that we've taken and stuff we learned from those trips, or stuff we want to pass on from those trips, maybe what not to do, like Jesse kind of said earlier. So before we get into our trips, let's do a little fantasy role play about where somewhere you haven't been, but you would like to go. So if you had this theoretical bucket list of travel, what's on your list? What's the next place on your list?
So here's my dream vacation, and I saw this a couple months back, and I'll probably have to say this till when I retire because it's like a 4-month-long trip.
Right.
It's 120 days. You start in London, and you go around the world
Oh,
on
wow.
a cruise ship. It's like $12,000. It's a little expensive, and it's very
Yeah, but it's around the
time-consuming.
world.
But like, who else has been around the world?
Right.
You're like Ferdinand Magellan.
Right, so I was just thinking,
Like, how many people have
so it's got to be
actually
a short list.
circumnavigated the globe?
Right.
You know, to me, that's almost like walking on the moon, which I'll probably never do. But you know, if I can circumnavigate the globe,
Right.
I think that's also. So my biggest bucket list in life is to visit every continent
Oh, that's
before
cool.
I die.
Yeah.
And so that would cover pretty much all of it except for maybe Antarctica.
Yeah. Well, that's a tough one to get to there.
Yeah. But I do have a friend that went there.
Do you?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that would be pretty cool. So for me, I think next trip, we had planned this trip for this year and everything was canceled. So for me,
Thanks a lot, COVID.
thanks, COVID. For me, my next trip is to London, England. I've never been to the UK. I've been to Germany, but I've never been to England or Scotland or Ireland. And being of Scottish descent, I've always just wanted to see that area and experience that.
It's like a pilgrimage, right?
It's like a pilgrimage, yeah. So anyway, so that was a plan for us this year that got canceled / postponed, whatever you want to call it. So that's my next trip that's out there that I'm thinking about that I'd like to do. I'd like for that to be fulfilled and that we could, do that trip that got canceled.
I hope we will.
Yeah.
This can't go on forever. Right?
No, that's right. Hopefully it can't go on forever. Okay, so let's talk about recent trips. Jesse, what do you got for us internationally?
So this was a trip that my wife and I took for our 10th anniversary. We went to Paris for 3 nights and spent 3 nights in Barcelona. I had already been to Paris with my brother on our 2-week trip, but there's something about Paris, it's not the same with your brother as it would be with your spouse or significant other.
They say it's a fairly romantic city.
Yeah, I just remember being very uncomfortable with my brother walking by the Eiffel Tower with all this music playing. I was like, this feels awkward.
Were there many other pairings of brothers walking around, or was it mostly?
No, well, there
romantic
may have. I'm
couples?
sure there was probably some, but
Yeah.
not that we ever noticed.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a lot of people, having picnics on the lawn and
Mm-hmm.
listening to music, beautiful music. And this was kind of, I guess, in the early part of the summer, so it was fairly nice weather there. But anyway, it's a lot different with your spouse. So this is a city that you don't go with your brother, unless it's the only one who'll go with you, then take the opportunity.
Right.
But Paris, I think the first time we learned from our mistakes, like when we got to the airport, we had no idea how to get even to the town. So we took a bus and it was a little bit of a culture shock because this is like the first time I'd ever been out of the country. Everything's in French.
Yeah, that's a
And
culture shock.
You're like, what in the world? But, eventually and then we were walking down the Champs-Élysées. We didn't really have a place to stay, so we were going to go find a hostel. But we found out that in Paris, there's so many hotels, hostels probably aren't even the best way to go.
Okay.
Hotels they're all over the city, they're all in good spots, and you could find any number of hotels in your ballpark, in your price range. Hostels were about the same price as a hotel. And come on, who doesn't want to have your own bathroom and your
Right.
own bed
Right.
and not sharing with a million other people
Or
you
your
don't
own
know?
blanket, for that matter.
Or your own blanket, right. Yeah, so I mean, I would much rather stay at a hotel than a hostel.
Right.
So we also learned that the French, especially Parisians, have a very bad reputation for being kind of snobbish. But what we found there is if you try, and this would be a good travel tip, learn a little bit of the language. Attempt to speak to them in their mother tongue, and things will go a lot better for you.
Just kind of softens
Just
that.
like merci, things like that. Yeah, merci goes so far in that town.
Yeah.
They know you don't speak French, but at least if you make the effort, then it will change their whole kind of viewpoint of you. So you're not an ugly American, you're at least somebody who's trying to interact with them.
Right.
So
you're a pathetic American. So,
Pathetic American.
so maybe they have pity on you instead of contempt.
So we met some people who were very helpful with like ordering food and stuff like that. And we stayed in the Latin Quarter, which is it's a nice area. It's more of a college kind of vibe. It's where a lot of the universities are, and it's kind of close to the city center. So that's a good spot to stay in Paris, is the Latin Quarter. But the beautiful thing about Paris is it's really easy to get around. They have a terrific subway system that would rival something like New York.
Okay.
And the best thing to do is to buy, this is just kind of a tip too about going to Paris, they have little books of tickets that you can buy like 10 at a time that saves you a little bit of money.
So instead of buying like a week pass or a
Right.
month pass.
Right, you're right. There are unlimited passes that they sell, but if you look at how much they cost against how much you actually use it, because you're going to want to walk in Paris.
Right.
You're not going to want to be under the ground the whole time. There's so much stuff to see and do there.
I think that's a good tip for most of Europe as a whole is be prepared for walking.
Right, good comfortable shoes.
Good comfortable shoes. You're going to walk a lot.
They're worth their weight in gold.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can buy books at 10. It works on the subway and it also works on the bus system.
Oh, good.
So
yeah. Multi-purpose.
Yeah, it's really easy to get around in town. There's a lot of great food, and my wife still gets on to me about not taking her to a bunch of fancy restaurants in Paris. But there's lots of good food. But you can also shop at markets and stuff like that. That's a great way to get food kind of on the cheap. Get sandwiches or fruits or French wine or whatever.
So especially if you're staying in a hotel that has like a kitchenette or a way to prepare food or
Right.
store cold food.
And like our trip to France earlier, these markets are great.
Yeah, the markets are great.
That's one of my favorite parts about France, is the food markets are terrific. It's just awesome quality.
Well, and it's a
food.
great way to get away from a lot of tourists because usually the people that are frequenting those areas are locals. So
Right.
you're meeting locals on both a consumer and a shopper standpoint. So yeah, it's a good interaction with local people, both sides. And you're getting food it's the same food you're going to probably get in a really good restaurant, but you're getting it the same way that the chef would get it.
Right.
So
Yeah. So, and that's a very good way to interact with local people. And that's really one of the best parts about travel.
It is.
Is interacting with the locals.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's where you get the culture.
Yeah, meeting people. Because honestly, we don't think about it because we're going to someone else's culture. So we're very focused on what we're going to experience. But when you're there in a situation like that, there's a good chance that the person you're meeting is just as curious about North Carolina or America or whatever part of the country you're from, as you are about their culture. So there's always that give and take opportunity if you meet the right person and you're willing to take the time to kind of break through that language barrier.
And that translates to almost any culture. It's not
Absolutely.
just Europe.
Yeah.
It's also Asia. it's also, excuse me, it's all over the world.
Yep.
So anyway, yeah, markets are a great place to go. Anyway, what else? Yeah, to travel back and around the town is pretty simple. So you got to go to the main sites like the Eiffel Tower, Montmartre, Versailles, place like that. But one thing you need to watch out for is pickpockets and, excuse me, is people who may not have the best intentions.
Right.
I had a situation where I ran into some people at Montmartre. And anyway, it's kind of a scam they had going where they would give you a little bracelet that was supposed to get you in there.
Oh.
And they want you to give them 10 euros. But newsflash, you don't need a bracelet to get into a church. They'll let you in anyway. So anyway, Amy found out about this, and my wife, and she, long story short, she got her money back.
Oh, nice.
By scaring these guys who were not native Parisians.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but anyway, last thing I'll say about this is you can get from the airport, Charles de Gaulle, to anywhere in the city on the subway.
Yeah.
So it's really convenient to go that way.
Yeah, local travel. It's not always the case that you need a rental car or to hire a car.
Right.
A lot of times, especially in Europe and Asia, public transportation is so well established. It may require you to go outside your comfort zone and learn some symbols or some words or some numbers in another language and acclimate yourself with a map or something. But
and that's also another way to get involved in the local culture a little bit. That's
right.
where you're going to see the local people. The local people are going to be riding buses and taking subways and stuff like that.
Yep,
So,
absolutely. That it for your Paris
yeah,
trip?
that's where I'll leave it.
All right, so for my more local trip, I was going to share 2 trips recently to the same place. So recently here in North
So
Carolina.
good you went back again.
So good, I went back again. So it just so happened that in the last 5 weeks or so, I've had 2 trips to the Black Mountain, Asheville area. Specifically, Black Mountain is where we stayed. And if you're not familiar with Black Mountain, if you're traveling west through North Carolina towards Asheville, you're going to pass through Black Mountain just before you get to Asheville. It's a small town. It's got a lot of small town feel. There is a college there, Montreat College, a very old college, very beautiful, picturesque, and but not a lot of that college town feel. So again, it's more of a small,
Not quite so granola as Asheville.
right? Not quite as granola as Asheville, which during the COVID pandemic, I don't know where granola fits on the spectrum, but we like to use the term mask friendly to basically describe places where if you're not wearing your mask, they're not friendly. So we recently stayed there. We used VRBO for both of our stays.
It's a great site.
Great site. There's HomeAway, there's VRBO, Airbnb. These sites all function very similarly. A lot of times the same homes can often be found on multiple of those sites. The property owners may list it different ways, or if it's a rental company or a real estate company that manages the property, then they may list it on all of them. But I prefer dealing with a property owner over a real estate company. I think it's always just an easier transaction. Just in case you're listening and you're interested in going to Black Mountain, I'll go ahead and throw out both of those home numbers. One was Big Oak Cabin. Their VRBO number is 1364028. And that's a 3-bedroom house, so if that would suit you, then check that out. The other is a 2-bedroom, a little smaller, but very unique, very very pretty house. It's called the Carriage House. That's VRBO number 778559. Shout out to both those properties. Had great stays at both. Look, if they weren't good homes and weren't beautiful and nicely appointed and good, easy to deal with property managers, I wouldn't have gave you the numbers. So we stayed there 2 different occasions in each of those houses. And one of the things that draws me to Black Mountain, there's a series of books that were written by a local author named William Forrester. I hope I got that right. The first book in the series is 30 Seconds After. So if you're interested in reading about a place before you go there, it's a fictional story, but it takes place in a real place. So there's a lot of carryover and things you can look for when you're in the town. It's worth a read. It's a good book. It's an easy, quick read. So anyway, some local restaurants I recommend, because again, if you're going to be somewhere, don't just go to the McDonald's or, I mean, you may have to for a meal. I'm not saying don't completely write off going somewhere comfortable or familiar, but try a local place. So some restaurants that I would recommend in Black Mountain, because I think we've eaten at almost all of them between 2 stays. The Trailhead Restaurant, it's great. During COVID, kind of limited seating, so if you can call and make a reservation, I recommend doing that, or just be prepared to wait if you go during peak meal hours. And that kind of is indicative of most small family-owned operated businesses. My Father's Pizza, if you're looking for a good slice of pizza, and Phil's Barbecue, because, in the South, we love us some barbecue. Now, you may be watching this in Texas, and you're like, oh, brisket? No, I didn't say brisket. It's barbecue. So, anyway.
Barbecue is pig, right?
That's right. Barbecue's pig. And it's not the thing sitting in your backyard that you grill food on. That's a grill. That's not a barbecue. I mean, I don't want to be too decisive here, but that's not a barbecue.
Barbecue is the very basic core of it, like slow cooking.
Yeah, that's right. Barbecue is the food you're eating, not the act of doing it, cooking it. Some shops I'd recommend, very unique European flair, Europa. Give those guys a shout out. Great store. A lot of neat selection of items from Europe and local. And then, of course, anytime you're in a small North Carolina town, if they've got a hardware or a general store, check it out. No telling what you're going to find in there. And they've got one called Town Hardware. It's right on the corner.
The older the better, right?
The older the better. I went in one time in one up in the Sparta area. They had an original Teddy Ruxpin. So if you're an 80s kid, they had one still sitting on the shelf. I was like, this is awesome. So anyway.
Did you grab it?
I did not, because I was a little poorer then and it was out of my price range, because they knew what they had, so it was priced accordingly. But anyway, and then if you're looking for your kind of souvenir, say you went to the town item, hat, shirt, I'm wearing a Black Mountain shirt today, CW Moose Trading, that's a cool place to check out too. For parks, I recommend, if you want to exercise, walk, play disc golf, Veterans Park has a nice paved walking area. And then if you're just looking for a scenic view of the mountains, and also it's mentioned in the books, there's Lake Tomahawk that has a walking trail that's gravel, but I don't recommend going there after rain because it is a little muddy. But anyway, as a whole, Black Mountain's a great town to check out. You're really close to Asheville. We also went and saw Catawba Falls, which is nearby, and it's actually back to the east of Black Mountain. It can get a little crowded, but it's an easy hike. So, I think it's right at a mile to the main part of the waterfall. But all along the trail, you're beside the river, lots of little swimming holes. If you go in the summer, take a towel. Be prepared to, dip your feet in and get a little wet. But also there may be some crowds because it is a popular attraction for locals. There's a lot of waterfalls in western North Carolina like that.
Yeah, there's a huge number. So when we've driven in that area in the past, there's some that you just kind of stumble across.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's a gorgeous area.
Yeah, and then you're not far from Biltmore, so we went to Biltmore. During COVID, I don't know when people listen to this or watch this, but during COVID, rules are a little different. Biltmore's not quite the enchanting, friendly experience that I've had in the past during COVID.
Not much is right now.
That's right. Not much is right now. Unfortunately, it seems that most of their employees are more focused on their new rules, so you kind of miss out on some of that experience that we've had in years past. Yeah. But again, still beautiful location, beautiful house, lots of great history if you like to learn about the history of an area, and the influence that a family can have on an area. Through the birth of forestry and giving people jobs and building this house. And, it's just a really neat story. So it's worth checking out if you're in the area and you've never been to Biltmore. Check it out.
Their flower gardens are amazing, too.
Yeah, and
it's gorgeous.
Their gardens are really something. And you can really go just about any time of the year and see something unique there because they do such a good job with their horticulture.
Yeah. It's definitely a place you should go at least once in your life.
Absolutely, yeah. And then finally, I'd just give a plug for the North Carolina Arboretum in Asheville. So, this is a kind of place where if you're looking to maybe get away from the crowds of the major tourist attractions like Biltmore and you want to do something a little quieter. So, the Arboretum designed just by the same person who did most of the work at Biltmore. And so you're getting the same feel, the same character. You can kind of feel it in the way that the gardens are laid out at the Arboretum. And if you go, in the relatively near future, they're having a really cool Lego display. So if you've got kids, your kids are into Legos. They've got Legos all over the gardens, like these huge sculptures of animals. So that's really cool to check out and see also. So I had a good trip to Black Mountain both times.
Plus in Asheville, by the Biltmore, they have the world's fanciest McDonald's.
Absolutely. I mean, anytime you find a McDonald's with a grand piano.
Like granite or marble floors.
A huge fireplace.
Like a huge fireplace.
Vaulted ceilings.
This is the only McDonald's we can actually sign off on you going to.
Yeah, that's right.
So.
I mean, that would be the one I would recommend you check out. It's the only place where the only thing more pleasant than the sound of a ketchup packet squirting onto a plate is the baby grand piano playing in the background. So that's my trip for my recent trip. And then now it's time for our travel quick trip tip.
Say that 5 times fast.
Yeah, I don't. It's almost impossible. But that's what we're going to call this segment, where we each give you a real quick tip on taking a trip.
So my tip would be, and this is something that I've learned on these trips going to Europe. If you're looking to get money, now I would do that ahead of time. You can order euros, you can order different, wherever you're going, you can order the money ahead of time through your bank, and that's probably about your best exchange rate. I would not at all suggest changing money at an airport or at like a train station or something like that, because that's probably about the worst rates you're going to get. Or in touristy areas, those are not great rates either. But if you are at a place that doesn't take cash for some reason, Visa is very widely accepted.
Yep.
Get yourself I would say a credit card more than a debit card.
Yes, because debit cards can cause problems in
you don't want anything messed up with your day-to-day life on your bank account. So a credit card, at least you can, if you have something go wrong, you can at least make a claim against it and you can get your money back in a more timely manner. Right. You don't really want something like that happening to your bank account. So I would say a good travel card. And
do you think it's still a good idea to even take cash?
I think yes. In most places, I would at least have some cash.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, at least in some places for tipping, although in Paris that's not really expected.
Yeah, there's a lot of tipping's a really gray area. We could probably do
that's
a whole segment on tipping. Yeah, because tipping's all over the place globally. And we're back. We didn't know we were taking a break, but our equipment told us we were taking a break. So we were talking about currency. Jesse was saying, it's a good idea to take some local currency.
But at least 2 to 3 weeks out.
Yes.
Like, give yourself some time to get that, because you're not always going to find a bank that is going to have euros or whatever form of currency that you need in stock.
That's right.
Do it at least 2 to 3 weeks out.
And as many times as I've traveled and taken local currency with me, I've never had a problem with bringing too much of it back. So you don't have to worry about it on the back end. You'll probably spend it all.
Yeah, there's always something you can buy.
There's always something. American money's not going to work at most places.
No,
so definitely be proactive enough to exchange some before you go. And don't assume that your card's going to work everywhere, because, again, if you go to some of these smaller places for a restaurant, or if you have to take a cab or a rickshaw or whatever, they may not have a card reader.
Right. You can bring dollars with you, but expect to pay a premium for exchanging that. So it's probably not the best way to go about it. Order ahead of time through your bank, or use a good solid travel credit card, not necessarily a debit card, but a credit card.
Yep. All right. Well, that's a good tip. For my quick trip tip, I'm going to recommend that as you look at places to stay or car rentals or any of those type things, look for rewards programs. If they offer one, enroll in it. You may not build up any points in advance, but there may be some initial discounts or discounts while you're experiencing something that you may be able to reap as a reward for being a member. They're going to pester you about it anyway, so you might as well do it. Even if you want to generate a Jim Bob's Travel email address so that you can use that for all of your rewards programs that you don't really have any intention of continuing to use long term. You know, it takes a little bit of work, but I promise it'll pay dividends. You know, something as easy as renting a car. Companies like Avis offer extra rewards programs that cost nothing but really give you a lot of priority in the check-in and check-out process of getting your vehicle that totally make the 10 minutes of online hassle of setting up an account worth it. And I said Avis, but that probably applies to most rental car companies. Right. So that's number one. And number two, along the same vein, always ask for a discount. I promise you there's some kind of discount that you can line up with some facet of your life. If you work in the education system, they may have an educational discount. You're in the military or you're a veteran.
There's some huge military discounts, especially at Disney.
Yeah.
I tell people what a military discount is for tickets, and it's about half of what they're paying.
It's amazing the amount of money you could save if you just take the time to do a little research of what they offer and figure out how you can apply it to you. Just going in blindly and just saying, hey, do you guys have a discount? They're probably going to say either no, or they'll say, well, we do offer some discounts to certain customers. But they're not going to tell you, so you may have to do a little legwork on the front end. But there's always some kind of discount, AAA discount, Travelers Express, something. There's something out there that you can take advantage of. So definitely take advantage of it. Do your homework before any trip.
One thing I'll give a plug on that too. Frequent flyer miles is
sign up for them.
Yeah, sign up for that. Don't waste those, because I was able to actually get a ticket for my wife to Hawaii a couple years back. Just off of frequent flyer miles.
Yeah.
Which is, it's huge. And
yeah,
we had an awesome trip together. So
the airlines have the database to store all that information. Even if you only fly once, every 6 months or once a year or once every. Go ahead and enroll. Don't think I don't fly enough to build up rewards or frequent flyer miles. You fly enough. If you're going to fly, sign up for it.
It's really no extra effort except for
right.
maybe entering in a frequent flyer number. It's not that difficult.
Right, exactly. It's worth the effort. So that's our quick trip tips of the day. And I think next we're gonna kind of wrap this up with a deal of the week, so to speak. Jesse's got a couple of deals he's gonna throw at you that we've come across on the internet that we think are worthwhile trips to look into, and then we'll talk about what we're gonna do next week.
So every week on Wednesday, there's a certain site that I go to, and they send out a top 20 for the week. This website is Travel Zoo, and I try to recommend it to everybody, even though we're not monetized by them at this point, but maybe we could ask, right?
Yeah, that's right. It never hurts to ask.
Right. But it's a great website because they have every week they put out a top 20. There's several other websites like Sherman's Travel puts out a top 25, and they kind of search through all these different sites on the internet and find the best deals. And I've seen some terrific deals for next year. Like right now we're not really able to do a whole lot of traveling because of this, but you can book out ahead of time, and this will also help you kind of plan it. For me, I have to plan over a year out in advance just because of how we ask for our vacation time off. So it behooves me to look for a trip far in advance. So there's actually two of them that I'll throw out. I found this one. It's either out of Washington, D.C. or out of New York. And that's one thing. A lot of these trips will go out of New York. So, but it's pretty easy to get to. You just have to kind of do the legwork to get there.
Yeah.
But this includes flights and 6 nights in a hotel. You go from New York to Amsterdam, spend 3 nights in Amsterdam, which is a beautiful, beautiful town. Awesome stuff to go see, even if you're not into the party scene. It's still,
There's a lot of history.
yeah, it's a beautiful town.
Yeah.
Like, when I first went to Amsterdam, I was like, man, this is going to be kind of a dirty, maybe like a Las Vegas type town or something. But it's really not. It's a beautiful, picturesque European town. So you spend 3 nights there, and then you go to another place, which is on my bucket list. I have yet to go there, but I was planning to go there last summer, but we didn't get to because I think they had some unrest. But it's 3 nights in Prague.
Oh,
And Prague is also just a phenomenally beautiful town, at least from the pictures I've seen and from other recommendations that I've got from other people. And so, flights, 6 nights in a hotel, and $6.99. That's
Wow.
just a terrific, terrific price. A lot of times you're not even going to be able to find flights for that price.
Yeah, hotels or for that
Yeah.
price either.
Yeah, and think about it. 6 nights in a hotel, how much you pay a night for a hotel? About $100 a night?
Yeah,
There you go,
and that's-
$600.
And that's
So-
cheaper probably.
Yeah.
That's the cheap end right now. I would
Yeah, so
think.
that's a terrific, terrific deal.
Yeah, that's
The
good.
second deal that I found was even cheaper, if you can imagine that. But it's from Fort Lauderdale or Miami to Costa Rica, go to San Jose. And this is more of a kind of an adventure place. You spend 3 nights in La Fortuna, I think it is, and 3 nights. La Fortuna is like a volcanic area, kind of in the mountains, and I think it's Antonio Miguel, which is more of a beach area. Costa Rica is very well known for their wilderness and for beautiful, picturesque beaches. Flights, 6 nights in a hotel, 6 nights for $3.99 a person. That's $400,
$400.
people. $400. How much do you spend? I mean, you could find $400 in your budget. I think just about anybody could.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, that's
So,
a good deal.
Those are both like super cheap.
And again, you may
Terrific
not be able to
prices.
fly there right now with COVID in your schedule, but like Jesse said, a lot of these flights you can book 6, 8, even 10 months out in advance
Right.
sometimes. So if you can work your schedule out, you can buy it now at a really good price and have your next year's trip, set. And it gives you all these months or whatever to plan out what you want to do while you're in
Get
those
your
locations.
passport, get your money.
That's right. All those things that we talked about, do your homework, figure out what you want to do while you're there.
Right.
But yeah, those are great deals. All right, so next week, what's our trip you're going to talk about?
I may go to a place that we both have visited before, a little town called Barcelona.
Oh yeah,
One of my favorite towns. It's such a cool place.
beautiful.
Yep.
Yeah, and in keeping with the local side of things, I'm going to stick in North Carolina for at least one more week, and I'm going to go to the other end. So we're going to talk about Eastern North Carolina, and I'll talk about a trip to Emerald Isle. So
Sounds good.
that'll do it for us. We're going to sign off and see what kind of adventures we can find this week. So until next time, we are Carolina and Beyond. You can send us a message on the app that you're listening to this. There's usually an option to message us directly, or you can feel free to email us at Carolina and Beyond. That's A-N-D and Beyond, not the and symbol. Carolina and Beyond podcast at gmail.com. We'll look for your emails there if you have questions, or if you have a trip that you'd like to hear us review, or if you have a question about one of the trips we discussed today. Feel free to email us or contact us with any questions you might have.
Yeah, we'd love to share our limited knowledge with you, but
Yeah, and if there's something that we missed that you think we should include, feel free to let us know that too. Thanks for listening.
have a great day. Keep on traveling.
See ya.